Hello, hello, and welcome. Welcome to the informal virtual launch party for my latest book, Where the Party Never Ended, Ghosts of the Old Baraboo Inn. I'm going to do my mandatory waiting 5 seconds so that I can see the first little eyeballs popping up. And I can hear Oscar pitter-pattering as we speak, coming over to be asked to come onto the bed. So he will provide some background entertainment for us as we go through tonight's launch party. So I just want to thank you all for joining and for supporting the book. This has been a wild ride these last couple of weeks. The book came out on May 4th. I can't believe it's already May 18th. And I want to welcome everybody who's here because they see me on Facebook Live and they're like, yes, Amelia's going to tell some ghost stories. And then to all the folks who came over from the Old Baraboo Inn, from that fandom, and for Shelley Wells and BC Farr for plugging the event and sending everybody over to watch this evening. And I want to thank all of you that have supported the book so far, for buying a copy, for putting up reviews. So it's got 6 5-star reviews so far on Amazon. Thank you all so very much for that. It has been ranked in the Amazon bestsellers in the Ghosts and Hauntings, Supernaturalism, and Unexplained Mysteries categories. And then I wanted to share kind of a goofy fun fact. This has nothing to do with anything. It just gave me a chuckle. I was refreshing the rankings hourly, and the Kindle rank hit number 666 in Occult Supernatural and number 616 in Ghosts and Hauntings, which I thought was kind of interesting, since 616 is supposed to be the real 666. It just put a little smile in my heart. And obviously the book was ranked much higher than that, but when I saw those numbers, I took a little screenshot of it because I thought it was funny. But in any case, it has remained in the top 100 and in the Amazon bestsellers in these other categories, and you guys are all amazing, and I appreciate it so very much. And please keep them coming. Please keep the reviews coming, or the rankings on Goodreads is also helpful, to just pop in with to say that you read the book or to give it some stars. I do appreciate it so very much. And I also want to invite everybody to the in-person launch party, which is going to take place at the Old Baraboo Inn on July 10th. So that's going to be Saturday, July 10th at the Old Baraboo Inn at 7 p.m. There is a mini ghost hunt happening afterwards. That's a ticketed event, so you'll have to go to the Old Baraboo Inn Facebook page to find the Eventbrite link, and I'll share that as well at some point. But then the book launch itself is free. There's no cover. Pop in and say hi if you're going to be in the area. That's the Big Top Parade and Circus Celebration Weekend in Baraboo, which I don't think they're having a big thing this year, but they're still celebrating, so there's going to be a lot of people in town, and I'm really excited. A little nervous to have my first event back in the world that's non-virtual, but it's going to be a lot of fun, and I will bring all of my books and some items from the Dragon Goddess Boutique as well. And we will also, people who have been featured in the book will share their stories, and we're just going to have a really good time with it. So I also wanted to let everybody know, you can't really tell at all, but I am wearing my Old Baraboo Inn shirt. Bow chicka bow wow. And the shirt says Where the Party Never Ended. And it says I got ghost bombed at the Old Baraboo Inn. So if you're interested, if you like those t-shirts, I don't know if they're still available, but I ordered mine from the Old Baraboo Inn from Shelley Wells, so I'm putting her on the spot. So where to get the book if you're interested? Let me show you the book, and so that you're not just staring at my shirt the whole time. This is it. It's gorgeous. It has this nice tactile feel, this matte cover. It's got 40 photos in it, and if you order the Kindle version, the photos are all in color. So Some of the really cool spooky photos get slightly lost in translation in the black and white nature of the printing, but the Kindle version has everything nice and in crisp color and everything too. And you can get it on Amazon. You can get it for Kindle. You can order it at barnesandnoble.com. You can order it from my online store, and all those links are there in the description of the video. You can order from me. It'll be an autographed copy. I'm still waiting on my official shipment of copies to send out to people. So just give me a little minute on that. And then hopefully it'll also be sold at stores in Baraboo, like the Village Booksmith. I know somebody had asked about that, and I'm working on that. And then there are other places where you can find my other books as well, other stores around Illinois. And if you live in Maryland, sort of, all the regionally themed places, but places like, Barnes and Noble and stuff like that as well. So let's move on to the fun part. So talking about the book, and the creation of the book has kind of a long story. When I first met Shelley back in December 2018, she was already talking about wanting a book, like wanting to have a book about the Old Baraboo Inn, and she had reached out to me and was like, how should I go about doing it, and how would I organize it, and who could we get on board to help out with it? And so I was trying to just kind of give friendly pointers. I'm like, oh, this is something you could do, here are my ideas. And we kind of volleyed this back and forth for a long time, and I put so much thought into it, and we talked so much back and forth about it, that I was like, well, I mean, why don't I just do it? And I sort of gathered up the courage to delve into a new book project. I'd already been working on a lot of other projects at the same time. And then last year, with the COVID pandemic hitting at this odd time that put me in a position to work from home and write from home, I said, this is it, let's do it. And I spent about 6 months. Really, I spent a year and a half kind of volleying ideas back and forth with Shelley. She sent me over 200 pages of material. I had a 90-page transcript just of BC telling stories about the inn, and tons and tons of information and photos and everything, and whittled that down to a book that is really 130 pages with photos and everything, capturing the history, the paranormal accounts, so people's firsthand accounts and personal stories, the haunted history and the lore about the place, and kind of also trying to capture the essence of it. One thing, first of all, I'm really proud and honored that I was able to participate in this, and that I was asked to do it / volunteered / we'll just say had the opportunity to do it. And I also spent an inordinate amount of time looking up the history of the Baraboo Inn in multiple places. So every source that you could possibly imagine. The bibliography is extensive. And I was deep in like the Library of Congress archives, looking at old Sanborn fire insurance maps and things like that. And so I personally am proud that this is probably the most comprehensive history out there about the Old Baraboo Inn. And to be the person who was able to put that together is a big deal for me, because I'm not just a storyteller. I'm also a historian, and it really puts a feather in my cap that I got to kind of roll all of my interests into one. Telling the stories, sharing the love for the inn. People have the love for the Old Baraboo Inn is crazy, and I've seen that even more in the last couple of weeks with how excited people are. People that are fans of Baraboo and of the Old Baraboo Inn, that just love and adore the place and the ghost stories there, and of course all the spirits that inhabit the place. And it's a fun and interesting bunch of people, living and otherwise. So I tried to capture the essence of that in the book. And again, it was an honor to be able to work with BC and Shelley to put all this together and to have it be published through Haunted Road Media, who have published all of my paranormal books, all of the offerings that I have in the realm of the supernatural. And this was my 4th book with them. So thanks also to Mike Ricksecker. And hello to everybody who has joined. Hello, Ron. Hello, Shelley. Hello, Earl. I see comments. If you are here, feel free to drop in a comment and say hello. And so what I want to do next is acknowledge the people who were involved in the book to the best extent that I can. So there were a lot of shout outs in the book to different people. And there were acknowledgments, of course, for people who submitted their photos and their stories and or their editing expertise and otherwise. So I'm going to go down that list really quick, just making sure that everybody gets a little bit of recognition. So those folks are John Cabrera, Dennis Kattenkamp, Thomas Dyer, Perry Foster, Alan and Judy Gold, Michael J. Heath, Dawn Holefield, Melinda Hollis, Allison Jornlin, Judy Carroll, Rachel Laverty, Chad Lewis, Kathleen Little, Jason Martin, Tammy Newkirk, Lisa Revanelli, Michael Reagan, Ron Staton, Rana Trapanese, Edgar Winter of Dedgar's Dark Coffin Classics, along with Debbie and Tom, Samantha, Tracy Lang, BC Farr, Shelley Wells, Mike Ricksecker, Gwen Herwig, who's a co-author with Shelley Mordini of Haunted Baraboo, which is forthcoming this fall, and I'm super jazzed about that. My superhero husband, Jonathan Montgomery Pollock. Big shout out to him. He's right over there. And other folks are Brian J. Kano, Mary Marshall, Scotty Rorick, and bear with me. Suspense. Nick Sarlo, Ben Wideven, and boy, I think that covers it for now. So if I forgot anybody, just put it in the comments. But yes, and hello Tony. Let's see. All right, groovy. So I don't know where you all jumped in at, but I rattled off all the different places where you could get the book, and I'll do that again at the very end. Of course, I would not miss out on the opportunity to plug the book. But what I really want to do is read from the book. And I also want to let everybody know that the book was dedicated to 2 people that I miss very much tonight, that would have been here otherwise, as they would have been always, because they were always supporting everybody in the field of everything paranormal related and history and photography and just personally, you know, my personal life and everything. And those people are Brenda Wilder Antlitz and Tim Schoon. I think he pronounced his name Tim Schoen, but everybody says Schoon. And there was this hashtag Gone to Schoon on social media that I really think he would have gotten a kick out of. And I miss them, and I did dedicate the book to them. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that as well. I'm going to read an excerpt. There's so much to talk about, and there's so much that I would end up just reading the entire book and talking about the entire book, and I don't want to do that. What I want to do is kind of condense this into a fun story time where I'm going to share multiple stories from other places around Chicago and even Maryland, my home state, in addition to this, to kind of get everybody excited about this idea of haunted inns, hotels, and restaurants and bars. Again, this is just the informal launch party, and then we're going to hit it really hard when we're actually at the Old Baraboo Inn in July, and I'm going to see, I think, many of you there. Hello to David L. Hawkins. Thank you for tuning in. So the excerpt that I'm going to read for now is going to be from Chapter 5. It's called, the Chapter 5 is named Front Bar Old Honky Tonk Saloon, and you'll see why. And so let's raise a toast as well for those of you who have anything to toast. Could be tea, could be water, it could be just air. To the place where the party never ended. Oh, if you're tuning in late, I'm wearing my Old Baraboo Inn shirt. Okay. The inn's front bar area is affectionately referred to as the Old Honky Tonk Saloon and constitutes the main bar, dining, kitchen, and stage areas. BC and other guests have seen ghostly arms and legs mingling in the crowds of regular living patrons during busy evenings at the bar. Staff and visitors have reported seeing sparkly orbs of light or static that fly through the bar, sometimes leading the eye in the direction of a pair of disembodied arms or legs, or the floating torso of a spirit. BC has spotted patrons at the bar who seem out of place, dressed in odd costumes or period clothing. Upon a second glance, they've vanished. As mentioned previously, a Budweiser salesman once encountered the ghost of an older woman in the front bar that BC and Shelley believes is Anna Bender. And this is my favorite one. That BC and Shelley believe is Anna Bender. In 2005, he visited the inn before opening hours to hang signs and display promotional material. He apparently spent the better part of his visit mocking the idea of the inn being haunted until he had a life-changing experience. He was standing behind the bar with BC nearby when he felt compelled to look to his right toward the doorway between the front and back bars. When he did so, he saw a woman standing in the doorway, glaring at him. He shouted, "Holy shit!" At the same time, BC felt a strong pulling sensation from that side of the room and looked over toward the doorway, catching a glimpse of her as she vanished into the wall. Although she only appeared for a moment, the salesman was able to provide a clear and concise physical description of her, including that her face was quite wrinkled and that she, quote, wore a dress reminiscent of Little House on the Prairie. The experience left the salesman shaken and distraught, and he changed his delivery route soon after. A couple of employees from Cisco have also had strange encounters in the front bar and kitchen areas. One representative was alone in the building with BC and standing in the front bar area arranging a delivery when she witnessed the swinging doors to the kitchen swing open and close by themselves. She brought this to BC's attention, and when they entered the kitchen to investigate, they found a pile of steel pots and pans stacked neatly on top of each other on the kitchen floor. Her response to the incredible sight? "Oh my God, would you look at that? Okay." BC was shocked, but this was not the first time he had witnessed activity like this in the kitchen or near the front bar area. On another occasion, he and a skeptical friend were alone by the bar when they heard items falling and breaking in the kitchen. BC rushed through the kitchen doors and witnessed 2 stacks of plates flying at an upward angle, alternating from each other and crashing into the wall above the dishwasher. After he yelled for the activity to stop because plates are expensive, it quieted. He then surveyed the mess and asked, "Who is going to clean this up?" A broom flew toward him from the closet and landed on the pile of broken plates. On yet another occasion, he was the first person to arrive in the building one morning after being the last one to leave the night before and discovered a cluster of bar stools arranged in a teepee shape in the center of the bar. A supervisor from Cisco was sitting at the bar one time and chatting with BC, who was standing behind the bar and leaning on the counter. According to BC, a large orb came flying through the doorway between the back bar and front bar, hit my elbow, and the damn thing spun me around. Boom! Like, yeah, thanks, man. Takes your breath away. The supervisor witnessed the incident and was left utterly speechless as well. On another occasion, a delivery man who had dropped off some meat in the kitchen declared that he did not believe in ghosts. Moments later, he removed his hat and remarked that he felt like he had just been hit by something. Then he felt like he was hit again. As he ran out the back door, he heard a disembodied voice call after him, "Well, I'll see you, buddy." One of the most beloved spirits of the inn is that of an alleged prostitute and beautiful young woman named Mary, who is believed to have died tragically at the inn around 1903. 2 other prostitutes are also said to have died on the premises. Some mediums have reported that the sounds of a woman heard crying in the basement are Mary, who may have been assaulted or murdered down there, or both. BC believes Mary was sexually assaulted and later murdered or died from a botched abortion in the basement. In fact, there are 2 Marys who haunt the inn. The other Mary, known as Miss Mary, was apparently a school teacher whose spirit is confined primarily to the basement. We'll encounter her again later and learn more about her story in the chapter, The Basement. Whatever may have happened to Cordes and Mary, her spirit remains at the inn and she enjoys being the life of the party. Mary's ghostly image has been captured in the front bar area on film, and she is often seen wearing a bright or other light-colored dress with large bejeweled earrings and a feather in her hair. She can sometimes be seen dancing to her favorite jukebox song, The House is Rockin' by Stevie Ray Vaughan. A patron once came into the inn and told BC he was there to help him with his problem, passing him a note behind the bar with a list of women's names who he claimed had died on the property. The name Mary was on the list with her year of death listed as 1903. Notably, the song's jukebox number is 19/03. Mary is also likely to show up in photos during costumed living history events at the inn, where guests are encouraged to dress up like cowboys and saloon girls. One visitor even shared a compelling spirit photo of what looked like Mary with BC, who displayed it behind the bar. The photo repeatedly flew off its nail on the wall toward customers seated at the bar, particularly women with blonde hair, until BC finally had to take it down. The story of the flying photo made it onto the front page of the Baraboo News Republic on October 31st, 2003. Occasionally, a bottle of Jack Daniels will also fly off the shelf and break into 1,000 pieces on the floor. So, this is just 5 pages of the interesting stories of the hauntings that occur there at the Old Baraboo Inn. And if you have just joined recently, of course you know that this is the virtual launch party for Where the Party Never Ended, Ghosts of the Old Baraboo Inn. And sharing a little bit more about the backstory of the Old Baraboo Inn. It is in Baraboo, Wisconsin, and is one of the Midwest's most haunted places. Home to a lively cast of ghostly characters, stories of the inn's sordid history abound. For more than 150 years, the inn's atmosphere has remained warm, welcoming, and full of music, dancing, laughter, and ghosts. So the history of the inn is very cool, and it's very mysterious at the same time. There's some concrete information, and then there's a lot of places to kind of fill in the gaps. And I had just a fascinating journey, like I was saying at the beginning, kind of going down this rabbit hole of being one of the first people to actually really take an in-depth look into the history of the inn, combing through, Library of Congress archives and other things to learn as much as I possibly could. And, records from the Sauk County Historical Society up in Wisconsin. I had to do all of this from home during COVID. And it was really fun to get to be a historian for reals and to do this sleuthing. And I had some other partners that helped me. Gwen Herwig helped a lot, and she's a co-author of Haunted Baraboo, which will be coming out this fall, and I'm really excited about that book as well. And so the Old Baraboo Inn has been an inn, it's been a hotel, it's been bars, it's been restaurants, it's a building with a storied history, as I like to say. And it has often been rumored to have been a speakeasy and a gambling house during the Prohibition era, as well as a brothel during the years that it was used as a hotel and boarding house, which was from the 1870s onward. And the cornerstone of the Baraboo Inn, the Old Baraboo Inn, reads 1864. So the building itself was constructed around that time by the Benders, George and Anna Bender, who were prolific brewers in the Baraboo brewing industry and the Wisconsin brewing industry. They had emigrated from Germany and were just a fascinating couple, and Anna Bender ran the Bender Hotel, which had been the Bender Saloon sample room, I think. So they, obviously you can read the whole detailed story in the book, but it's putting together the details was insane because every other place in Baraboo had the same name of some kind that had the name Brewery, Baraboo, Bender, or Effinger in it. And if you're from Baraboo, you're probably laughing because I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. So looking on these old maps and trying to figure out what was where and how they all stacked and how they all related to each other was really fascinating. But in any case, they were prolific brewers and business people in the Baraboo community. And right there on Walnut Street at the corner of Walnut and Lynn is where the Old Baraboo Inn stands today. And it is still a bar and grill, and you can go there and you can drink and you can eat and you can be merry with very cool people. And they also offer different types of paranormal and historical tours and events. It's supposed to be haunted by upwards of 30 spirits. And I'm telling you, it's not an exaggeration. When you go there, you can feel that there's this great energy to it. So even though, even in the excerpt that I was reading, there was like some dark, definitely some sort of dark moments that were called out there. But it is like a predominantly friendly place where the energy feels positive. It feels like there's like it's like a family feeling to it. Like there was a lot of love that went into the caretaking of the Old Baraboo Inn and still goes into it today, and you can really feel that. And the spirits who were there, regardless of what happened to them and maybe how they died or didn't die, there on the property, they had fun there. They maintain this happy, fun, interesting atmosphere. And there's all sorts of cool stuff that goes on there that you don't see at a lot of other haunted places, including like these flying orbs. So people that have not previously believed in spirits have had interesting experiences there. And some of the remarkable ones, which I touched on in the excerpt, are like big objects moving on their own, sometimes with witnesses, and then these flying orbs that are like almost like these flying ping pong balls of light or static, but they're solid and they make contact with the objects or the people in their way. I mean, everything under the sun. There's the typical haunting kind of stuff, the voices and the footsteps and the cries and the laughs, but it's predominantly playful and kind of, as if you're walking into a party that has been going on for a very long time. Even in some of the darker areas of the inn where maybe some not so good things happened, there's a sense of it's hard to describe. There's a sense that the spirits are sort of reaching out, and that they're connecting. They're not lost. They're not trapped. And I'm just speaking offhand, about it, but that they are there and they're together and they're aware of each other and that they're aware of the people around them. So it's really fascinating. If you're not a believer, and you're looking for that thing to push you over the line, I would go there. And if you are a believer, it's a great place to go. And it changed, going there changed my life. I was invited to speak there for an event, and then I ended up filming with the Travel Channel there. And then I ended up, that was for Hometown Horror. Then I ended up consulting with Discovery Plus for Fright Club with the Ghost Brothers and Jack Osborne. They did an episode there virtually that you can watch as well on Discovery Plus. And then I got to write a book about it, and it's been just so very cool. So I want to pause here because we're at a half hour, and I just want to make sure everybody's groovy. Let's do another toast with whatever we're toasting with. Could be emojis. And then I want to see if anybody has any questions before I move on to the next leg of the party, which is that I'm just going to read a few more spooky stories. And I also want to do a spooky talk. So you guys know, if you were with me for Snake Nanigans and Stories, my fall storytelling series, I got these little cards. They're like game cards that are literally for children, that have weird questions on them that are related to spooky stuff. And so I'm going to just pull one out. I'm going to ask about it. Oh, this is a good one. And if you want to have fun and participate, you can have fun however you want, but if you want to participate, just put your answer in the comments. All right, so spooky talk with a little ghost on it. Not all ghosts are ugly and spooky. We were just talking about this. Some are quite cute, like the cartoon character Casper the Friendly Ghost. Another adorable ghost was the giant marshmallow man that attacked New York in the comedy movie Ghostbusters. What other monster or ghoul characters make you laugh? So let's talk about things that don't have to do with evil and demons for once, in relation to the world of the paranormal. So, there's Oscar making his cameo appearance. What other monster or ghoul characters make you laugh? So please leave your comments there for everybody to see and share. And then if there's no questions, I'm going to move on to the other stories. So of course, it wouldn't be complete if I didn't plug one of my other books. So I'm going to read from Maryland Ghosts, another regionally themed book that I wrote many years ago. Maryland Ghosts, Paranormal Encounters in the Free State. This was my first publication with Haunted Road Media. So I'm sappy and sentimental about that. But in the book, I recount one of my own tales that happened when I was a kiddo at the Inn at Deep Creek Lake, which is in Oakland and Garrett County, Maryland. So we're just going to do a few stories from Chicago and Maryland that have to do with haunted bars, restaurants, inns, and things like that. If you have any questions along the way, feel free to pop them in there to the comments. And we have an answer to our monster or ghoul characters that make us laugh, our Frankenberry and Count Chocula. Excellent choices, Ron. Thank you. All right. So, the following incident was almost a personal experience. I was there, but fast asleep for most of it. In August of 1996, I was on an ideal summer vacation with my parents at Deep Creek Lake in far western Maryland, complete with hiking, a boat ride, bike rides along the C&O Canal, and a whitewater rafting trip on the nearby Youghiogheny River. Our hotel was built close to the lake's shore, and at the time it was a dated, dark, and oddly furnished Swiss chalet-style hotel called the Alpine Village Inn. Today, it goes by the more modern name of Inn at Deep Creek Lake and was fully renovated in 2010. Tales circulated through the inn about more than just the good area fishing spots and the local booming black bear population. The ghosts of Native Americans were said to haunt the inn grounds. Artifacts from the Cherokee, Shawnee, and Delaware Indians have been found near Deep Creek Lake, although members of the indigenous Mingo tribe mostly inhabited the area before white Europeans showed up. The restaurant near the inn was allegedly haunted by the ghost of an Indian chief, who was seen strolling regally from room to room on an almost daily basis. The restaurant also operates under a new name today, so it's possible the renovations there and at the inn have altered paranormal activity and maybe even triggered more of it. At the time, there was even a leaflet included in the restaurant's menu to educate or warn guests about the chief's regular appearances from the other side. The first night we stayed at the inn, we ate dinner at the inn's restaurant. I had my eye out the whole time for any paranormal activity, ever hopeful that something extraordinary would happen, of course, within the hour and a half that I was there. After a nice dinner, we returned to our room, ready for sleep after a long day of adventures. I remember that after we got settled in and everything was quiet, I kept hearing the low murmur of men's voices talking in a language I didn't recognize. Even though we were in a 2-story hotel with rooms on either side of us, the sounds seemed like they were right in the room with us and yet muffled at the same time. They didn't sound like voices coming through the wall from a television or a conversation, and we hadn't heard any other guests' conversations during our stay. The voices were clear and calm, and the discussion seemed to go on for hours until I fell asleep. I woke up around 5 a.m. to a flurry of activity in the room. The first thing I saw was my mom sitting up in bed, pointing toward the kitchen area of the room, which was on the other side of the wall from my bed. My dad was in the kitchen murmuring obscenities, while my mom asked what the hell was going on. She was startled awake by what she described as scratching noises in the kitchen, then heard the door to the small hotel refrigerator blast open and all of the contents hit the floor. She woke my dad up, and he jumped up to see what had happened. I must have woken up just seconds later. Even though our room had no hidden areas, open windows, or doors, and the kitchen was basically the size of a large open closet, my mom was convinced something was in the room with us. I could hear my dad picking up the fallen soda cans and setting them on the counter. When my mom got up to help him, I followed her. As I peeked around the wall into the kitchen, I saw cans and water bottles all over the floor. We were a thirsty bunch. It was as if they were tossed with force. The suction on a refrigerator door would make it difficult for the door to just fall or fly open, and if it did, it didn't seem like everything in the fridge would just fall out everywhere. My dad was baffled and checked the main door to the room, the sliding glass door, and the windows, and everything was locked securely. The floors were all well sealed, and it was obvious that no animals had gotten in. My mom was entirely convinced, based on the noises she had heard, that something or someone large, as she kept saying, had to have done it. I thought about this for the rest of our trip, but we didn't speak of it again after that morning. We moved on to a different hotel after another night's stay, and it struck me as odd that we just kind of let the whole thing go. Even as I interviewed my parents for this story and asked them about our stay at the hotel that time, they didn't seem to remember much about it until I started to describe my side of it again. Of course, I also hadn't remembered that we took a boat ride while on that trip and that I drove a speedboat. I was like 13, until they reminded me. Yet I remembered the restaurant menu in detail. Go figure. So that is about the inn at Deep Creek Lake, from Maryland Ghosts, Paranormal Encounters in the Free State. Of course, my home state is Maryland, so I have a big soft spot for all the wonderful ghost lore from that state as well. Let me check in. Ralph Covert, thank you and welcome. Paula Field, thank you also and welcome. And it looks like there is a question from Earl. Have you had any personal experiences at the inn? Yes, I have. And those are definitely detailed in the book as well. So just a couple little things that had happened, but two of them were the same. One happened the night of December 8th, 2018, which was the first time I ever went there with Jonathan. And then something similar to that happened again when we went back the following December for the launch party that we had there for Travel Channel's Hometown Horror. And what it was that upstairs in the area known as the Old Brothel, in the back bedroom, not the one with the bunk beds, I can't be in there. But in the other back bedroom, I was in there with Jonathan. It was just the two of us. We were sort of quietly taking in the space, taking a few photos, and I felt a hand wrap around the back of my neck. It was like a woman's hand, and it was a firm but gentle. It wasn't really even threatening. It was almost like flirtatious. And I just had this sensation. I was thinking about how tired I was because we had had a very long day, and there was a paranormal investigation going on, and we weren't sure that we wanted to join it. We just wanted to do a little bit of exploring and then move on, go back to our hotel and pass out. And so this hand that wrapped around my throat, or around the back of my neck, kind of felt like a gentle sort of like, you seem tired. Maybe you should turn in for the night, honey, kind of thing. And I told Jonathan about it, and like all the hair stood up on the back of my neck and everything. And I was like, maybe that's our sign that it's time for us to go. And he was like, yeah, that sounds like a sign. So when we returned a year later, we participated in what they call the mini ghost hunt. Was it before or after the launch party that was there for Travel Channel? And I was standing in the living room of that apartment, and I felt it again, like a hand wrapping around the back of my neck. This time it wasn't like telling me to leave or anything. It was just sort of like that same familiar touch. And it did feel kind of playful and familiar and friendly, and it wasn't really scary, but it was jarring. So definitely interesting. My next excerpt that I'm going to read is going to be from Adam Seltzer's The Ghosts of Chicago, and we're going to go on a little journey with, drumroll please, keeping it, family themed, since we have a place with a brothel and, gangster ghosts and all sorts of excitement. The haunted Hooters that's downtown. So, the haunted Hooters, folks. Keeping it classy here. Oh, and one more time, for those just joining, wearing my got ghost bombed at the Old Baraboo Inn where the party never ended shirt. There we go. Oscar's drinking coffee. drinking coffee. Let me get the lint roller out of the shot. Oh boy, my exciting life. Okay, so, all right. The downtown Hooters restaurant on Wells has long been rumored to be haunted. Well, really almost every restaurant in Chicago has, but the haunted Hooters has gotten a lot of media attention over the years for obvious reasons, despite the fact that no good story has come up to explain who or what could be haunting it. I never took the stories about it seriously, but I had to give some credit to the Hooters company for admitting that they were stumped, not just making up some nonsense story about, Al Capone having once owned the building, or about it being built on an Indian burial ground. Those are two major tropes, although there is an Al Capone connection with Old Baraboo Inn that does not seem to be BS, so that's interesting. A while ago, I was brought to the Hooters by the crew of NPR's Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me to do an interview and chat about ghosts a little. As is generally the case, I think they expected me to come off as more of a lunatic than I did. As we walked into the alley, one guy asked me, "Who's with us right now?" "Christ, I don't know," I said. "What are you asking me for?" They brought along a little bit of ghost hunting gear they'd thrown together, and I told them what I always do. You can bring pretty much any piece of equipment on a ghost hunt and call it ghost hunting gear. You can bring your electric toothbrush along, and if it starts turning itself off and on, you can blame that on a ghost. There's really no difference from saying that a jump in the electromagnetic field or the ion count is coming from a ghost if you get right down to it. Preach, Adam. In any case, nothing showed up, though the waitress told us she's heard whispering in the back room. This lines it up with the usual stories I hear about the place. Whisperings, footsteps, and a general feeling of creepiness. You get this at several places nearby. Next door stands an old mansion currently called Flair House. It houses an advertising agency. One of the surviving old houses of the neighborhood known a century ago as Smoky Hollow. A receptionist there once told me that the area behind the house out in the alley sometimes seemed a bit spooky. Stories of the area being haunted may go back to decades before the Hooters was built. In the 1950s, a Tribune article about long-forgotten haunted houses in Chicago spoke of a house on Erie Street that was said to be haunted. Having once been used by a medical college that often purchased bodies from resurrectionists, it was said that human remains had been found in the yard, presumably around the turn of the 20th century, and that on quiet evenings, neighbors could hear the clip-clop of hooves and the sound of body snatchers unloading bodies from their wagons. Exactly which house on Erie this wasn't recorded, though, and my early attempts to find out where it was proved fruitless. However, I did eventually run across a story about a place on Erie right about where the Hooters and Flair House are now that was involved in the grave robbing trade, which could well be the source of the stories of that haunted house on Erie. Could the Hooters be on the same site where that house once stood? In January of 1875, the Tribune announced that body snatchers, resurrection men, and other such ghouls were out of business in Chicago. New laws gave medical schools first dibs on the bodies bound from the newly established Potter's Field in Jefferson Park, so there would be no need for Chicago institutions to buy corpses from ghouls as they had been doing for years. However, the problem of robbing graves continued. No such law providing schools with bodies existed in Ann Arbor, Michigan, or Iowa City, Iowa, so Chicago ghouls would simply ship their quarry there. Only a month after saying body snatchers were out of business, the Tribune was providing grim accounts of a new body snatching case that had been uncovered on the north side. Body snatchers, it was said, were digging into the graves, opening the caskets, and drawing the body out by the eye sockets using a hook and rope, a pretty standard method for getting the bodies. Digging up the whole coffin was considered a real rookie mistake. All one had to do was dig down to the head and cut a hole in it. Now you know. The bodies this new band of thieves dug up were being routed through the alley behind a barn and Charnel House near Erie and Wells, where they were loaded into barrels for shipment to Ann Arbor. This alley would be right about in the area where the current site of the Hooters and Flair House stand. The grave robber in charge of this particular gang was one L.R. Williams, though he variously gave his name as George Smith or George Wallace, a medical student from Rush Medical College who had been in business for a few months. He was caught doing a daring chase through the alleys at Erie and Wells, then was released on a $1,500 bond. He promptly jumped bail and disappeared. As far as I know, they never caught him. How many bodies the robbers may have routed through the barn in Charnel House en route to Michigan or Iowa is unknown, but at least 5 barrels full of bodies were found at the barn after Williams was captured. 5 barrels. Given the possible connection to Hooters, it's rather odd to read the Tribune's lurid account of the 2 female bodies in the morgue during the coroner's inquest, which, disturbingly enough, was probably intended to be titillating. Hard and stiff, the death rigor intensified by the bitter cold, there lay upon the next slab the naked form of a beautiful woman exposed to all the indignities, and of unsympathetic and indifferent looks and touches. Stockings covered the feet and a portion of the shapely limbs, but the rest of her person was entirely nude. The head was turned to one side in a posture that would have been natural to animate modesty, and which, in the poor, maltreated corpse, carried with it a pitying suggestion of womanly purity. Although the changes of death had somewhat altered the contour of her body, the beholder could not be but struck with the shapeliness of her limbs and the general beauty of her person. But her parted lips and staring eyeballs made a Gorgon horror of the face that in life had been comely and attractive. Wow. That article would not have aged well. In the other barrels were 2 victims of consumption, a man with a long black beard and a young boy, and another older man dead of causes unspecified. They were given far less vivid description than the dead naked women. One wouldn't usually expect ghosts to be haunting the places where their bodies were taken. Again, we usually expect them to haunt the places where they died. But naturally, we can't get too cocky about applying logic to the illogical, and no better story to back up the hauntings here has yet emerged. Of course, it's probably also worth noting that the Sparrow Funeral Home stood less than a block away at 708 North Wells. Most of the big, elaborate gangster funerals of the day were held there, and the procession would have gone right by the Hooters in many cases. Enjoy the wings and try not to... This is the if you go. Enjoy the wings and try not to act like a douchebag, which is probably hard to do if you're in a Hooters, or if you're the sort of person who goes to Hooters. The area out back can seem remarkably quiet, as can many downtown portions of Erie Street, which is still dotted with old medical college buildings, especially as you go farther east from the Hooters. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the story of the haunted Hooters, which stands at the corner of Erie Street and Wells Street in the lower north side. From The Ghosts of Chicago, the Windy City's Most Famous Haunts by my friend Adam Seltzer. Let's catch up on questions. Nobody else has an answer to spooky talk? Monsters or ghoul characters that make you laugh? Do we have any? JP, can you think of any? Putting him on the spot. We'll come back to Jonathan, ladies and gentlemen. Afterbar asks, what was your most memorable paranormal experience? That is that's a question. I've had so many memorable experiences. Of course, the most life-changing experience that I had was when I was a kid, and that's one everybody's heard probably 100 times about. The one and only time that I ever thought that I saw an apparition, and that was like a full-body apparition, a ghost of a young boy at this abandoned house called Walter's House, affectionately known by local legend as Walter's House. That was in Moncton, Maryland, and it used to stand next to where the Manor Tavern is today, so you can still visit the restaurant, and the place where the house stood was next to the parking lot, and now I think the house was torn down while I was still a child, but now there's like an equestrian hospital there, so you can go and at least still see the property. And then some of the other houses that were occupied at the time that I was a kid, they were all part of this bigger complex of the grand estate of Lord Baltimore, My Lady's Manor. Some of them were occupied when I was a kid, and now they're abandoned too. And it's very interesting to go back. Every time I go back, it's changed, but I became fascinated with that house and with whoever the ghost may have been, and I ended up seeing the entirely white form of a young man or a boy. Everything, his clothing, his hair, his skin was completely white, and he had no face. But it wasn't, it sounds terrifying, it wasn't scary, it was exhilarating. It was just the absence of a face. It wasn't anything like a grisly. It was sort of, I made this exhilarating sort of connection with like, wow, what if ghosts are real? And I'm, even today, all these decades later, I still ask myself that same question, but I know definitely what I saw that day. And so that would be the one that stuck with me, and that also helped me in my formative young years. I was 11 and 12 years old when I explored that house, and was like a little junior ghost hunter, and I wanted to be a writer when I grew up. So here I am today. Chris, hello, Chris. Chris says Elvira is his all-time paranormal laugh. That is an excellent answer. That is excellent. Richard asks, have you ever been to the Edgar Allan Poe house in Baltimore? Yes, I have, and it's so awesome. When I was younger, you could still take tours there. You may be able to still do that now. The coolest thing about the Edgar Allan Poe house is how tiny it is. So it's like it's like a 3-story row home where he lived. There were several people living in the house, and barely one person will fit in a corridor at a time. And it's just fascinating to see in the attic where he had his like writing studio, how tiny it was and how tiny the house was, and very dark. Just to see how people lived in Baltimore, in the 1800s and earlier, and just what a fascinating person Edgar Allan Poe was. And he has been given a bad rep in history. He's remembered much differently than he really was in his life, and the photos that we see of him are a lot different than who he was as well. And his principal biographer was somebody who didn't like him, so it's kind of one of those cautionary tales about how we interpret and how we interpret history, remembering Edgar Allan Poe in a certain way that really wasn't entirely true to who he was in life. We remember him a lot, mostly because the person who wrote about him didn't like him and was a rival editor in his lifetime. And so I'll shelve that conversation for another time, but I love the Edgar Allan Poe house. And then David asks, Bachelor's Grove, have you been there? Yes. Bachelor's Grove is another incredible place. It's another one of those places where people go and they're like, oh, it's just kind of boring, it's a little cemetery set back in the woods, yawn, who cares? I've heard people say like, oh yeah, I went there before, it was nothing. And then some people say it's the most haunted place on earth. And every single time I have ever been there, I've had a strong emotional reaction and emotional connection with it. I find it fascinating. Ursula Bielski wrote a great book about Bachelor's Grove. There's a lot of info out there available about it too. I have a story out there about Bachelor's Grove in a book called Encounters with the Paranormal that deals with my whole story from there. And that's a really cool place. David, have you been there? I'll catch you in the comments. So speaking of Ursula, the last story that I'm gonna share is going to be from Chicago Haunts by Ursula Bielski, her classic book. And this is going to be about one of the most haunted restaurants in Chicago, the Red Lion, which is open again today. I assume, of course, COVID notwithstanding. I just went by there in an Uber like 2 days ago, and I think that it's like still around. David, definitely you have to go. Put it on the bucket list. Go there during the day, when you can just park in the parking lot across the street and walk in. It's very cool. And then Richard says that tomorrow would have been Brenda's birthday. So yeah, Richard, I don't know if you were here at the beginning, but I also mentioned that I dedicated the book to her and to another one of our good friends, Tim Schoon or Tim Schoen. And so I miss her terribly. So let's read about the Red Lion pub here in close to where I live in Lakeview. I mean, technically I think it's over in Lincoln Park, over by DePaul University, but if you're in Chicago, you can go eat there and eat, drink, and be merry. So without further ado, in Chicago proper, a pair of pubs have for decades provided customers with more than bottled spirits. On the near north side, the Red Lion caters to a clientele of part upscale workaholics, a handful of students from nearby DePaul University, a sprinkle of homesick Britons, and the occasional glint-eyed ghost hunter. If customers aren't dining on the scrumptious English eats, watching TV, or waiting for a movie at the Biograph Theater directly across the street, They can catch an earful of the unusual from owner John Cordwell, his son Colin, or one of the handful of waitstaff and bartenders familiar with the pub's unseen clientele. This comfy but curious tavern distinguishes itself as perhaps the best known of Chicago's haunted public places. Rightfully so, for the Red Lion is utterly poised for paranormal infiltration. Staring almost right into the box office of the Biograph Theater, the Red Lion stands a gunshot away from the alley said to be haunted by the late great gangster John Dillinger, and a mile or so from the site of the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. Neighbor to a handful of mobsters, including Al Capone, who dwelled in the apartments of 1930s Lincoln Park, the building housing the Red Lion snuggled right into its seedy surroundings, gaining notoriety as a bookmaker's joint in the 1940s and playing a part in what manager Colin Cordwell calls the neighborhood's bad karma. The pub's inexplicable occurrences began well before the Cordwells arrived. According to Colin Cordwell, Dan Danforth, owner of the building's previous establishment, Dirty Dan's, was well aware of the haunting and often invited neighboring business people to come over and meet the ghosts. Another previous tenant who had occupied an upstairs apartment ran into trouble while trying to renovate. After spending time working on the interior, he would lock the doors behind him, only to return later to find his work ruined, boards and nails pulled up, and tools thrown about. One of the most enduring haunting legends of this property is of a beautiful young woman who either died or was killed in one of the upstairs apartments. Psychics, wildly attracted to the Red Lion, seem to support the tale. Many have claimed receiving psychic impressions of a young flapper-type girl undergoing terrible suffering. However, Lou Demas, a next-door neighbor whose family owned the Red Lion's building for many years, disputes such romantic ramblings, countering them with his own memories of a young girl named Sharon, that says mentally retarded, who used to sit on the porch outside the building with her elderly parents, who also died in the building. Plump and plain, Sharon would unlikely be generating the glamorous impressions gleaned by sensitives. That's not to say she couldn't be responsible for locking women in the upstairs restroom, sometimes for 15 or 20 minutes before freeing the well-powdered prisoners. Some researchers also believe that another phenomenon, the sudden strong smell of perfume, might be attributed to a girl like Sharon who wouldn't be aware of the subtlety involved in donning perfume. Whoever this female presence may be, she is only one of a number of spirits believed to live on at the Lion. Others, like an unshaven young cowboy, a bearded and black-hatted masculine figure, and a blond man with Slavic features, manifest themselves by walking across the bar, calling out people's names, and throwing things around the upstairs rooms. Among the Lion's sundry lingering guests, the most intriguing spirit of all for John Cordwell is the one he believes to be that of his own father. A successful architect and native Englishman, John met his wife Justine in Africa 40 years ago while inspecting the progress of a university he had designed. A Chicago anthropologist, Justine brought John to her home city where he began an architectural firm. With 80 architects on board, John retired from his own firm in the mid-1980s and went into real estate development. As a retirement project of sorts, John decided to open the English-style pub that would become the Red Lion. In 1984, he bought the then 102-year-old property at 2446 North Lincoln Avenue and began renovation. As a finishing touch, John hung a gorgeous stained glass window on the stairway as a memorial to his father, an artist whose grave in England was without a headstone. John also placed a brass plaque under the window dedicating it to his dad. In an interview with one researcher, Cordwell stated his belief that everything seems to emanate from that point. I think he was very pleased with it. If John's father is pleased by his son's tribute, he shows his approval in some funny ways. Upstairs customers standing next to the stairway and John himself have reported sudden and inexplicable dizzy spells and taps on the shoulder. Receiving such reports with a certain expectancy, John interprets these subtle scenes as gentle reminders of his father's notable faith in the spirit world, recalling the elder Cordwell's promise to come back and contact his son after death. So let's see. And this book, I think this is from 1998. So some of the information has been updated since then as well. And so some of these dates would also go back even further. So that was the story of the Red Lion Pub from Chicago, Hans Goslar of the Windy City by Ursula Bielski. And there are bits and pieces of the Red Lion story that remind me of the Old Baraboo Inn. And I will go through the rest of these questions before I wrap everything up. Hello to Mikey. Thank you for joining. Thanks, Mike, for the compliment. And David, the E2 nightclub. Oh yeah. Okay. Oh, interesting. Thank you for sharing. I'm always glad when people are sharing the things that they're excited about. The clique. Okay, we'll have to talk more about that. Thank you for posting that. So yeah, there's always a new adventure to be had, and so many places that I haven't been to that I'm still excited to go back to. So one more time for those who are just joining or just hanging in there, this has been the virtual launch party for Where the Party Never Ended, Ghosts of the Old Baraboo Inn, my fourth and latest book from Haunted Road Media. And I want to thank Shelley Wells and BC Farr and Mike Ricksecker and everybody who contributed their stories, expertise, photography, editing skills to the book. This was a labor of love on my part for many, many months. Talked about it with Shelley for upwards of a year and a half before we got it off the ground. And the love of the Old Baraboo Inn comes through, I think, within these pages. And it also comes through with the enthusiasm and the enthusiastic response that people have had to the book being published, because Baraboo is just one of the coolest places, and the Old Baraboo Inn is just the cherry on top of the whole town. I want to thank everybody again for supporting the book, for supporting me. It's been an Amazon bestseller for 2 straight weeks, and it's got 5-star reviews, and I don't want to, give an inch and take a mile, but if you can keep on coming in with the reviews and the ratings on Goodreads and Amazon and everything, that's helpful for me. It's good for the book. I'm really excited to share the book with the world and to have out a new publication. So this is my 4th book, but it's the first. I've released new editions of my other books in the meantime, but this I haven't since Maryland Ghosts in 2012. This is my first new book, and I do have another book coming out hopefully this fall. It's going to be the poetry book that I've been teasing. I've been working on that book for years, and it's going to be a small chapbook of poetry. It's going to be called Apparitions. It's not going to be related to ghosts in the supernatural sense. It's branded with the rest of what I do, but it's going to be a foray into other things that I write. I'm not just somebody who writes about the supernatural exclusively, although I surely have the most fun doing that part of it. Thanks, David, for buying a copy, and to everybody who has bought a copy, thank you, Shelley. And I will see everybody, or many of you, hopefully, in person on July 10th at 7 p.m., 6:30 p.m. for the early bird VIP reception, to have the live launch where other people whose stories were featured in the book will be able to talk about their stories, and we can all share experiences, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And I want to raise a toast again to everybody. Thank you all for joining, and I hope that you had fun. And I hope that you'll check out the book. Once again, the Kindle version has the full color photos. So the book has 40 photos in it, but it's full color for the Kindle version. So you get a little bit more of that pop with some of the alleged spirit photos. You can really see the detail very well in that version. And let me see if there was anything else that let me look at my little to-do list here. Things that I wanted to mention. I think I covered everything. I really am grateful for your support. And if you do have any more questions, feel free to reach out to me anytime. So yeah, let's get to that toast. Thank you, everybody. One more time with the Old Baraboo Inn shirt, since I couldn't fit it in the whole shot. We actually have our friend Mary, Courtesan Mary, and Al Capone. There's an interesting connection with Al Capone with the book, so please stay tuned for more on that. I'm currently going down the rabbit hole of Al Capone lore as well, so that's going to be a new foray for me that we can all look forward to listening to me ramble about. And with that, I'm going to sign off. Thank you all again. Thank you, Tracy. Thank you, Richard. Thank you, David. And have a great night, everybody, and happy hauntings.